Okay, welcome. Welcome all of you. I just could I please ask you to mute your microphone. Elizabeth, please mute your microphone. That helps all of us to hear much better what's happening. So in general, please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. And if it's possible for your bandwidth, you can put on your camera so we can see your wonderful faces. It's really good to see all of you, and welcome to this session. So in preparation for the UN Road Safety Week, we at the Alliance have had a couple of sessions where we have been focusing on 30 kilometers an hour in urban settings. And we had a 3-day training a couple of weeks ago where we had Iman Abubaker with us from World Resource Institute. She's here again to help us on this today. Hi, Iman, welcome. We also had Rod King with us a couple of days ago where we talked about effective activism in general, and Rod is very experienced in a number of countries on urban settings and 20 kilometers an hour. So welcome to you, Rod. We also today have Rebecca Ashton. She's from FIA Foundation, and Rebecca is one of the brains behind this year's UN Road Safety Week and all the tools and activities and campaign, the whole campaign that is put forward for this year. So welcome to you, Rebecca, as well. So the structure we have now is that we'll start with each of you giving us a pitch for the case for 30 kilometers an hour. So I'll start with you, Iman. Could you give us the pitch why 30 kilometers an hour is important, please?
Okay, thank you so much, Lotte, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So my pitch is really, with the focus on sustainable cities. So when we think about sustainable cities and currently the trend that we're seeing, especially in developing countries and low-income countries, is towards car-oriented development, or where the car is king. And this has led to, I think, 3 main challenges, right? The first is that we're seeing that the way cities are being planned, the way cities are being developed and built, there's this strong gap between our land use and our transportation planning. And that has led to really creating spaces that are unsafe, that are not where people are not physically active, where they can't enjoy, where the overall livability and quality life is really decreasing. We also have in many cities across the world where with this focus on car-oriented cities and more exposure to cars, we're seeing that there's an increase in traffic fatalities and crashes, as many of you know, and we're losing a lot of our active young population, especially when we look at the African region, to road traffic fatalities. And the third element is that there's really this issue of people not having public space. So our streets are being taken up by the car, and there's children and elderly and vulnerable groups do not have a place where they could use and enjoy the space. So in cities where we have limited resources and limited capacity and all these really complex challenges, it feels like, from a decision maker's perspective or a designer's perspective or a politician, that it's very, the solution isn't there. And what we have found is that safer speed is actually one of the most effective, impactful, and cost-effective or affordable solution to really mitigate a lot of these challenges. So when you have safer speeds, or speeds especially at 30 kilometers per hour, you're significantly reducing the chances of someone dying from a traffic fatality or being seriously injured. And that affects how people enjoy their space, how people use the streets. It creates more space for people to get together, to walk, cycle, and it creates sort of a very enjoyable and livable environment, and thus improves the quality of life.
Thank you, Iman, very much the sustainable city perspectives that you brought to us. Rebecca, how about you? Why is 30 kilometers an hour default speed important?
Well, I guess I can only really speak from global context and from the point of view of the FIA Foundation, where we have a bird's eye view in terms of advocacy And one thing that's important, I think, to look at is that they're looking at 30-kilometre speeds have been mandated at a global level via the Stockholm Declaration and adopted in the UN resolution that's calling for a high-level meeting on road safety next year. And the wording in the Stockholm Declaration, as I'm sure you're all aware, is that those 30-kilometre speed streets where people and traffic mix in a frequent manner, that's what we're advocating for. 130 government ministers have signed up to the declaration. So there's already a big political mandate for us to push this button and to really drive action towards 2022. Something else to be aware of, I mean, there's the UN resolution and the Stockholm Declaration we've just discussed, but the SDGs as well, and the whole of civil society, the way that low speeds and halving road traffic injury by 2030 is such a priority. And one way to do that immediately and to really accelerate action towards this target is via limiting speeds to 30 kilometres or lower. This priority is linked to so many other benefits that Iman just mentioned around sustainability, around livability and environment and safe and sustainable environments. So from the foundation point of view, we see it as a key point of our advocacy internationally, really pushing for this agenda, really amplifying what NGOs are doing, really putting pressure on governments to take their support of the Stockholm Declaration to the next level and to see some real tangible commitments, which is what I think we're all working towards at global, national and regional level.
Thank you, Rebecca. We have the mandate already. We don't need to argue that much. It's already there. Rod, from your perspective, from the community perspective, why 30 kilometers an hour in urban settings, please?
Well, I guess I come from a completely different perspective than Rebecca, because what I'm very much doing and have been doing for the last 15, 20 years is working within communities as to what communities want in terms of what I call those public spaces between buildings that we call streets. And you know, when we look at those places, and I ask you to do that today or tomorrow, when you look in our cities and our streets and you actually look and see the people who are moving in those streets, you will almost always find that there are more people moving by walking and cycling than there are moving in cars. Yet when we look at that, we know and we feel that the cars are dominating that urban space which we have. They're dominating it. They're stopping us making choices about what we do. They're stopping our children being able to have the freedom to walk or cycle because of fear. And since the 1990s, it's been recognized, very small places to start with, that actually lowering the speed limit to 30 kilometers per hour or 20 miles per hour in my old unit's place here, make a huge difference. And what we find is in communities, around about 70% of people will say, yes, 20 is plenty in miles per hour, or that they love 30 in kilometers per hour. It's because it makes so much difference. For millions of years, we have been existing where the fastest thing we had to contend with, right, was an animal moving at 20 miles an hour or ourselves running into trees at 20 miles an hour. We're perfect for a 20 mile an hour, 30 kilometer per hour maximum speed environment. And that's being recognized in more and more places around the world. And it is getting so huge, this acceleration of places. Already a third of the UK, people live in places where they have a default 20 mile an hour or 30 kilometers per hour limit. And you know, underneath, we're all the same. You know, strip off the buildings and the religions and the politics and everything else, we're still exactly the same. When a 1.5 ton car hits an 8-year-old child on their way to school, the effect of that are as devastating for a child in Nairobi as it is for a child in London. And that's why 20 mile an hour, 30 kilometer per hour, it works so well It reduces casualties by around about 20%. It frees us up to make decisions about whether we want to walk or cycle. And it provides equity on the streets and fairness on the streets. And that's why I'm so pleased to see that as a global commitment from the UN, the WHO, and the organizations like FIA, Foundation, and so on. It's the way to go. And we all deserve to go together. So that's the community view.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rod. Really, the people's perspective there. Thank you for that. So we really wanted to hear these different angles to the argument and what we're going to focus on for the UN Road Safety Week. I'll now hand it over to Rebecca. Rebecca, you will talk us through what are the plans for the week. There's a website, there's a different components, an open letter, all these things we'll learn about now. Thank you, Rebecca.
No problem. I'm just going to share my screen and then go into, hang on one second. Here we go. Everyone, is that working okay? Great. Okay, so first of all, thanks to everyone who's been involved in the development of this campaign. It's been quite a great journey, consulting with different NGOs and different experts and seasoned campaigners, and we are now extremely excited to finally launch the campaign. The website is live, and all the assets, all the resources are live as well, so it's there to explore. But I will just quickly talk through the campaign. So as we discussed, obviously it's around 30-kilometer speed limits, and it's meant to be a campaign that is flexible and works with what you are already campaigning for and what you're already working on as NGOs. So it's not to divert your attention from your core mission, but to amplify it and to join a global moment where we're all moving in the same direction together. And I think we've already made this point, but I'll reiterate it. It's just that although the week we're focusing on speed limits and we'll host lots of events and have lots of activity, really this is a long haul to get policy change. It's really about building the right conditions for accountability and momentum into a high-level meeting in 2022, where we can say these endorsements have happened, these commitments have happened, and promote that at a global level and encourage others to really have the courage to take action. Anyway, so we'll just go through quickly what we have available in terms of campaign mechanisms. We have been in discussions about the open letter. Oh, sorry, here's the website live, very nice. And then you can check in some of the key messages. Again, NGOs, we've consulted with you and you made very clear that the Save Lives message wasn't strong enough. So we have put that at the top of the website and also included it in some of these key points. But here we go. So one of the key campaign mechanisms is the open letter. This is both a global call to action, as well as a tool that hopefully will supplement some of your activities. So there are editable versions on the website you can download, you can translate into local languages. You can also add your specific asks. So you might have specific advocacy around 30-kilometer speed limits you want to add to a global statement, just to really give it purpose and meaning to the policymaker that you're trying to engage. And there are other assets on the website as well that supplement this activity of signing up and then writing your own open letter. We do have a policy brief making all the arguments around equity, environment, livability, walkability, all sorts of reasons why 30-kilometer streets are a priority and evidence that supports that, and also a myths and facts document too, that I think is a really great way of briefing ministers or journalists around like tackling some of the key misconceptions around low speed. So those are some of the tools that can supplement that open letter. And this is obviously downloadable on the website and is available to start using now. It's also a good tool for engaging media if you want to use your own open letter in the media too. I'll just quickly go into the social media tools are all available as well. Obviously, we're all operating in slightly different versions of lockdown or no lockdown, and social media campaigns do have a role to play, obviously with civil society and also within our own communities. So we have a bunch of social media assets all around the key messages, adaptable, editable, add your own logo, add your own message, add your own picture, take your own picture, you know, all sorts of different versions which are now explorable. We also have this heart frame available on Facebook if you want to start showing your immediate support and help spreading the word on the campaign. I'm just here, they're all different sizes as well. So obviously we have some of the key messages for Instagram, and then we have calls to action, very simple ones where you sign the open letter and then you might write your first port of call in the campaign is, right, I'm going to start getting other people to join the campaign and to explore some of the assets around, some of the key messages around low speed streets. So these are some of the resources available. Here's the heart poster. You will have seen some of the pictures available to download on the website too. We cut that out. I was just going to say, one of the actions we talk about in the campaign pack, in addition to that sort of policymaker engagement, is also community level engagement. And one of the most basic, I think, first things we could do is a poster campaign. Obviously, try and turn your street into a 30-kilometre street using the posters or stenciling, and work with schools and community groups trying to turn their environments, hosting poster campaigns, creating that on social media too. Then we get into slightly more in-depth community engagement around a petition, which is saying broadly support the 30-kilometre, Love 30 campaign, but you here again, this is an editable live document where you can add your specific asks for your community. What do you want to change and what are you building support towards? Again, with evidence to your policymaker in terms of sending the policy brief or the myths and facts or any other evidence that you also have, your own case studies, the own work that you're doing already, some technical reports, whatever you feel is right and applicable for the context. And the whole purpose of all of these activities is a coordinated push to try and get endorsements or even better commitments around 30-kilometre speed. So we have this asset included in the campaign pack where if a policymaker is engaging with you, they will hopefully agree to an official photo which allows us to follow up and say, well, you have supported this campaign, you've signed the open letter, you've agreed to our, or broadly supported our specific demands, so you know, what happens next? How do we take this forward? This is part of the global activities as well. And here we go. I just wanted to highlight some of the different things we have on the website that I've just mentioned: the policy brief, myths and facts, toolkit, which talks a bit more about engaging media, using the open letter, using the petition in different ways, and other types of events like demonstrations or street closures that were highlighted in the Slowdown Toolkit of 2017, which could be replicable and would definitely be appropriate in highlighting the benefits of pedestrianised areas and low-speed communities if you're able to do that kind of demonstration project in your context. So I think the main takeaway is that there are lots of different tools. Hopefully they'll be adaptable and flexible to what you want to achieve. And the main thing is please keep us updated and stay in touch. And there are contact details with the campaign on the website. There'll be live changes to a lot of this. We'll develop tools as we go. And as we get high-level signatories to the open letter, we'll also be promoting that. And I'm really pleased to say that Dr. Tedros, the Director General of WHO, has signed up to the campaign. And that will be our first official announcement. We haven't actually made it yet, so let's not go too far on that one, but that will be the first official announcement of the campaign. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. We'll have questions at the end. So thank you very much for this. So Rebecca sort of gave an outline of the UN side and all the available tools that there are, but we at the Alliance have also done some preparation. We do have some grants and we do have some activities. So Liz, would you take us through that?
Yeah, hi everyone. And I'm just going to share my screen as well. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Rebecca. That was really great. So I'm just going to very briefly try and set what we as an alliance, how we, what we'll layer on top of that, how we plan to work with this campaign, and specifically in terms as well of the the grant round that many of you will have seen that we're calling for proposals. So ultimately, what we are seeking to do is to ask you to push as far as you can. So we have a long-term goal here that we would like to see 30 kilometers an hour as the default maximum in urban areas where people and vehicles mix. And as Rebecca says, this is from the Stockholm Declaration, from the UN resolution. It has a very, as Iman says, it has a very strong evidence base. As Rod says, it has a very strong community base. So we have, but we also recognise that different places are at very different roles in this. So we did some consultations, Rebecca and I, with a number of you, and we found that in some countries there is very little understanding of low-speed streets, of why 30 is necessary. Maybe 50 is the default. Maybe there's been a battle to even get streets to 50. It might be that there is community pushback, that there are myths about low speeds that need counteracting. It might be that there is an understanding for 30, but not enough support. It might be that there is support, but from a community level or even from policy makers, but that actually you don't have any commitment for that. In some countries, we hear that there are commitments. So 30 has been agreed, either maybe in particular areas or across the default, but that hasn't been put into place yet. There are no signs. There's no enforcement. So if a driver doesn't know that the limit is 30, how can they be expected to follow that? And then ultimately, we are seeing there are cases of commitment and action where things are being put into place. So I think our main message here is that we know that people are working from very different bases. So there is not one size fits all. Maybe you need to focus on getting some legislators to approve, to endorse 30, maybe using the signboard. And we'd very much like to hear, to see those photos that you get. It might be that you can get a commitment for 30, maybe around one school, maybe around all hospitals in a city, maybe in a whole city, maybe there's some national legislation you can push for. If you get a commitment, we would love to put that onto the commitment tracker, which is a tool that we have with the Alliance. It might be that you already have that commitment and it just needs a push to get it into action. Maybe you can do something with your community or your policy maker to push that commitment to actually put into action. And maybe so that we recognize that there are different places that people are at, and we need to be moving in the right direction. So what you do for your campaign will depend very much on what you see around you and what you see that it is possible. But we also need to see this in the long term, that the campaign is 1 week, but 30 doesn't happen in a week. So we need to be, we need to set the stage. We have the week as a tool. So the week is a tool for helping us to push towards 30. And then we have the longer term. How are we going to continue that momentum? How can we use what we've done? So I think I've talked about that enough. I'm going to move on just to talk briefly about some of the things that we as the Alliance are doing and how you can get involved with that. So during and in the run-up and during to the week, we will be running some regional events. We're working with the WHO legislator group to run some sessions to gather policymaker support and legislator support for 30 kilometers an hour. And you can see some of the provisional dates here. I think the 19th of May is fixed, but we had the other dates you should count as provisional at this point. So we'll be doing something. So the Africa chapter will be doing something with the Africa legislator group, In Latin America, we will also be running a session with legislators, and in Europe we have we're working with transport community for a roundtable type event, and then this will all build up to the Love 30 rally, which will be a global online event. All of these events will be online on the 19th of May, which is a Wednesday. And in the run up to this, we're asking NGOs to go out with their legislator, if possible, and to take pictures of their street and to see if they can get we're gathering videos for this, and we've been in touch with some of you around this. Other activities, obviously, you should know that we have a small grants round, and this is one of the preparation sessions for preparing your grant proposal. And the deadline for that is next Friday. No, sorry, it's not. It's the 29th, which is the following Monday. So you've got a little bit of time, and we would ask that you really think about, you know, how you can engage policymakers to endorse, commit, go further. Think about how far you can get. Think about what your campaign can achieve. As always, we'll be sharing stories and perspectives about 30. If you have a story about 30, I would send it to me. As you know, I love to share stories of what our NGOs are doing, and particularly we're interested in where you're getting engagement at that policy level, where you're getting NGOs to where you're getting policymakers to endorse or maybe to commit. It'd be let's gather some stories there, and also we'll be doing a lot of social media. We hope you'll be joining in with that as well, and pushing the global campaign. So I think I'll stop there. I think I've gone over my 5 minutes. Sorry, Lotte.
Thank you, Liz. I saw one question. I also saw you answered it, Rebecca, but just to be sure that everybody understands this correctly. So who is the letter, the open letter? Who is it from and who is it for? Who is it to?
Oh,
Rebecca, would you? Yeah, please.
Sure. So the open, well, it's a sort of multi-purpose open letter. So it'll be from essentially or endorsed by global high-level people such as Dr. Tedros. The letter is to whoever you choose it to be to. So you identify your policymaker, who you feel is most responsible, most accessible in terms of implementing the changes that you want to see, and address it to them. Is that clear? Sorry, I feel like because it's doing two slightly different things, that it's a bit confusing sometimes. That makes sense.
Kulan, you had the questions. Is that clear?
Yeah, clear. Thanks, Lotte. Yeah, thanks, Rebecca.
No problem.
Okay, good. All right, so I will move on to, we have a poll now, and there it is. So the poll is, where are you in your planning for the UN Road Safety Week? Please spend a minute slotting in your question here, or your answer, of course, your reply. Okay. And while you are putting in your replies there, I will gather the panel once again, which is Rebecca from FIA Foundation, Rebecca Ashton from FIA Foundation, Rod King from 20's Plenty, and Iman Abubaker from World Resource Institute. And then we will add an extra person, which is Patrick Kinanjoy from the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety. Maybe we have a conclusion to the poll. All right, so majority of you are planning. Some of you are ready and a few of you are not yet ready. This is very similar to when we meet at our global meetings, where we start talking about the week. Some have already plans, some are very far in their planning, and some are not yet there. So thank you for those replies. That's a good indication of where you are. Okay, so we have our panel with us now, virtually. And I would like to start with you, Rod, actually, a question here. So what is a top feature? What would be a top feature for an impactful campaign for 30 kilometers an hour?
I think when I think of impact, I think not of impact in terms of that might be interesting for the press or the media or whatever. I think about impact as to whether it's going to have real change in our society. And you know, so much in the past when we talked about speed limits, we've talked about speed limits for a particular place, whether that be outside of school or whatever. This is entirely different, because what this is doing is resetting what is a social norm about how we drive in the presence of people. And it's being done on a level which has never been done before globally. And that is the big opportunity which there is for Road Safety Week. For each one of us in the area which we operate, to be able to say, no, look, this is the global norm, 30 kilometers per hour. That is what is the consensus is about best practice wherever there are people sharing the roads with motor vehicles. So I think the key thing is for you all as NGOs to work within the area we usually work, whether that be nationally, regionally, or in a city, and say, this is the global norm, and this is what we want for our nation or our region or our city. And that is, I think, what is most impactful. If during Road Safety Week, we can lead up to that for the week itself, you can have that engagement with the people who can change the law on speed limits, and then build that platform which can stay being impactful for the rest of the year, because what we really need to do in 2021 is to get those speed limits changed in all of our public spaces where we want to share it with motors.
So really seeing it as a long-term campaign, seeing it as not just the week, not just the UN Road Safety Week in May, but seeing it as a long-term target. That's what you're calling for.
Oh, indeed. It's people sometimes confuse speed limits with traffic engineering, but it's really social engineering. This is something which we all know, that, and the vast majority of the people know, fast cars make us hesitant about using those streets. We all know that. And what it's about is really recognizing that, recognizing how many other people know that. And that will be a process. It's not an instant thing. It's something where we will be all working in different ways. Some will be ahead of others, some will be trailing, and some will be saying, look, we've already got this in one part of a country, let's have it in our part as well. Others will be saying, look, we've got it in other parts, some parts of our continent, let's have it in our nation as well. So we'll all be in different places. But the key thing which we have is this global agreement from everybody who's looked at this seriously, right, and has done it. Because for the last 20 years, this has been done in some places. It's not new, it's not controversial, right? It's not being tested, it works. So it's a case of, yes, all being in different places, but creating something in Global Road Safety Week, which is that milestone, that platform, which says from here we're going to build, right, on for the future.
Okay, great. Patrick, how about you? What is a feature of an impactful campaign?
Thank you, Lotte, and thank you, everyone. Yes, I'm delighted at least I can come in as to speak, especially on the side of the NGOs, and I'll pick up especially from the poll. We have seen that some people are prepared, others are not ready, and others are actually on the process. So, and this is actually picking up or adding to what Rod is actually alluding to. When we say we are planning a campaign, we know that campaigns, we do events. For example, we are sort of talking about a week event, and then we have several events within that week. But I'm thinking that if we are to achieve the impact in the long haul, it's that our planning must also include what will happen after the event or after the week. So especially for us now as the Alliance, we are looking at after that week, and in your planning, are you factoring in what will you do after to make sure that you are actually following up? So this is what we call it, we talk of the follow-up plan. What is it that you will do after? So you have your registrator with you, you have taken the pictures, you have had all those signatures. What are you going to use those for? So to make sure that you are using them as we continue towards 2022 and beyond, so that you achieve the 30 kilometer. As we know, advocacy is not like in some of these campaigns where you have to say that we are injecting people for polio vaccine within a week and that's end. So here we are looking at a long-term plan. So as you plan for the event, think of the after the event, what are you going to do, and have specific steps for what you are going to do. So depending on your context. So that's what I think would make more impact on the campaign. Thank you, Lotte.
Okay, I just I can see Kulan, you have a question actually of a campaign idea that you have. Do you want me to read it out, or would you like to ask it yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Lotte. Yeah, this is the plan that I had. See if you're working with the school community, because there are already signboards there saying 30 kilometers per hour. So we know the main
Excuse
people.
me, Kulan. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, we just had one who needed to mute. Thank you. Please go on.
So what I say is the main group who are traveling to school outside is the parents who are dropping off the kids and the transport service providers. So if we know that these are the two main people who are traveling or using the roads outside the school, can we have sessions with them in terms of telling them the importance of bringing down the speed to 30 kilometers per hour? So if that's possible, can we run this kind of program for this global meet?
Okay, so getting messages across to parents and to teachers in a campaign, Patrick, would that be a feature of an impactful campaign focusing on teachers and parents in school zones?
Yeah, that's for me, Lotte?
Yes, please.
Oh, yes, yes. Definitely. In fact, I was thinking as we proceed in terms of looking at how you sustain this kind of campaign, it's first of all, you can create a movement. And how do you create a movement? By identifying the groups that really can support your idea. So it is true that the school, and maybe some of the NGOs have seen this, that you have built a relationship with the schools, and the schools, they know these are the suppliers. The teachers know we have these children, what are the vulnerabilities, what are the risks. And actually, it is possible to create a movement. From the campaign, you create a movement with the suppliers, with the teachers, with the students, and actually demand that even that local area be 30 kilometers. Even if, I think even before there is legislation, or lower the speed for this area. If you are dropping your kid, if you are, bring some supplies, yes, that can work actually. That's what I think from my perspective, Kulan.
Okay. I don't know, Iman, do you want to add something?
Sure. So this is all like very interesting, and I think what brought to mind what I would like to share is Addis, the city where I'm from, Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, they set the speed limits to 30 kilometers per hour in 2017 and had campaigns there. And I think what we had found was impactful was three things. And in terms of the first was that it's really about knowing your audience. So in the case of, of the schools, and really identifying who it is that you're targeting and who it is that you're trying to whose minds you're trying to change, really understanding who your audience is and having a direct engagement and trying to understand what inspires them, what are some of the challenges, how do they understand speed. I think that was very critical in making the campaign impactful. The second, I think, is really coming with that is adding the local flavor, right? So really contextualizing it, not copy pasting something that's worked somewhere else. But you could really look at how you can adapt that to your city or to the audience that you're working with. And I think that's really important in leaving behind this impact in people's minds, right? So if you have that local essence in it, then people can relate and resonate to the message that you're putting across. And I think the last part is really striking that balance between storytelling and then having this evidence and facts, right? So I see that there's a comment there where, people are looking for the scientific facts to support this, and there's a lot of them. So really, being able to tell the story, resonating to the people emotional side of things, but also supporting that with the evidence and what Rod was saying is really a consensus of that 30 kilometers is a safe speed in urban areas. So I think in these three components really helped make the case successful for us. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Iman. So we're sort of talking about a campaign which is longer term activity, and then you have individual activities. That was one of the points that Liz made in her presentation. So Rod, did you want us to add something, please?
Yeah, it's a little bit of caution about the concept of 30 kilometers just around schools, and that is because we've seen many times that when we've been campaigning for a town-wide or city-wide 30 kilometers per hour speed limit, someone has said, well, don't we need it just around schools because that's where most of the danger is. And one of the things about what we found with isolated low speed limits is that when you get to the end of that isolated 200 meters of 30 kilometers per hour, you have a big sign saying go 20 kilometers per hour faster. And actually it's drivers who see most of the danger of children around schools because there's a lot of them. But actually at that same time, there are probably 4 or 5 times as many children spread around the rest of the community. And one of the dangers is if we focus on very small areas and try and set those at 30 kilometers. No. We're actually endorsing going faster everywhere else. So that's a concern which we've had, and why we feel it's far better to actually campaign for a citywide 30 kilometers per hour limit that can protect those children from their front doorstep of their home to their school, rather than just the last 100 meters of their school journey. But saying of that, I do know that there are some communities where there are fast main roads which are actually separating schools from communities, and of course that is a different position. But for most schools, they're within communities, and we'd really like to see 30 kilometers per hour across that whole.
Yeah. Thank you, Rod. I think we just need to focus on good advice for our NGOs here. What are activities, what are campaign elements that you can bring here, so we make it as specific as possible? Rebecca, did you have a comment?
Yes, sorry, I guess I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle. There's a couple of things I just wanted to add, but a top feature for any campaign, I think, is creating the conditions accountability. So obviously you have the campaign for the week, but ensuring that you've always got one eye on accountability mechanisms, whether that's your petition and building social accountability, whether that's an endorsement and building political accountability, that you have the tools, the communications tools to really push that and to ensure that accountability is always in the forefront of your mind, because I think it's all too easy for politicians to join campaigns, and also for people to feel part of something for a week and then not remember what it is or what it means. So I think it's just that long term, really reiterating what people are saying, that having an eye on what happens after the week. So what can I do after this? So there are other moments in the year, and for us, you know, there will be other moments in the year where the global community can come together and reinvigorate this idea around 30-kilometre speed streets, whether it's the UN General Assembly or the COP meeting in November. But there will be similarly other moments, I'm sure, like World Days, World Cities Day, UN Habitat, and various other things, where there are opportunities to remind people that they've endorsed a campaign and they're still, you know, still feel part of something, whether that's social accountability or political accountability. And another thing, just one last thing from me, is that particularly on events for the week, in terms of creating an impactful campaign, I'd really focus on the child and youth agenda and the rights-based agenda, really try and amplify child's voices, maybe ask children to write their own open letters. I think that was a suggestion from one of the NGOs, which I thought was really impactful, a different way to approach policymakers direct from the voices of youth and children. So just some thoughts around that, really, about facilitating youth in all of the activities, particularly in speaking truth to power, because I think they're very good at being direct and not beating around the bush as well. Those would be my two comments.
Thank you, Rebecca. We don't have much time left. We have 10 minutes left with the panel, so I just want to make sure we pick their brains the most efficient way while we have them. And I don't know, May, you are with us here, May from Philippines. You put in a question in advance, and it was around that you in the Philippines have 20 kilometers an hour, not 30 kilometers an hour. Do you want to pose your question, or do you want me to read it out? Yeah, I go ahead. So you're muted. All right, so May, yeah, please take it away.
Can you read it, because I'm just using a cell phone and I can.
Yeah, no, you said in my country there's a maximum speed limit for crowded streets and schools at 20 kilometers an hour. Should I push for 30 kilometers an hour? I think maybe this would be a question for Iman.
Yes, hi Lotte. Sorry, I dropped off momentarily, but I caught the end of that question. And I think we're in Addis for example, where we've reduced speeds to certain areas to 15 kilometers per hour. So I think, we're not trying to, it's not that 30 is the magic number. It's that really the lower the speeds, the safer these locations, and, wherever that we're trying to, if it's citywide, that's much more preferable. If that's what we're aiming for. So we're not trying to increase the speeds, but I think, as Rod said, and in the experience where, for example, where we have said, 30 kilometers around schools, what has happened is that we found that the traffic fatalities and injuries actually are on the way to school and not necessarily at the school gate. So sometimes there's so much focus on just that area that the buffer zone or the neighborhood surrounding it, or even the routes that children take, are often forgotten. So I think really looking more at the data and in terms of engaging with stakeholders and really understanding where are these issues coming from, where are vulnerable groups most exposed, and then taking that approach and then setting the speed limits. But I think the lower the speed, the better in all conditions. But I think definitely there are infrastructural engineering aspects that we take into consideration. So it really depends on the local context as well.
Yeah, Rod, did you want to add something?
Yes, I think one of the things which we all do when we're driving, we get used to norms for actually driving. And if you have a 50 kilometers per hour limit in the rest of the community, and you suddenly come into a 20 kilometer area, that seems far, far slower and difficult to adjust to. But if you have 30 kilometers per hour in the rest of the community, then it is far easier to adjust to 20, right? So these things connected up, and therefore if you've got lower speeds than the rest of the community, that will make your speed limits, which you have, which are 20 in those crowded places, more understandable as well. So again, it's getting that social consensus that if I see people, then the rules are that we travel no more than 30, and we keep that speed low.
So there has been another question here around enforcement and cameras. And so how do we know that it's 30 kilometers an hour, that people are speeding? How do we know that as a community? We don't have a speed gun. I don't have, I'm not the police. How do I, as a community member, know that actually people are speeding?
Hello, is that addressed to me? Nidul, I'm from Muskan. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, but we're just asking Rod King now to reply to this question, please.
Well, we have experience of a lot of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in the UK, and I have to say that most of them do not have a lot of enforcement. Right, some do. It varies from county to county and city to city. But what we find is invariably it brings speeds down, and it brings speeds down across the whole community. And we have on faster streets, the evidence shows that speeds come down by about 10 kilometers per hour. And so even without enforcement, if you can get speeds down, then for every one kilometers per hour reduction in speed, on average, you'll get around about a 4% reduction in casualties. So we know that even without enforcement, it works. It's not perfect, and you will still get speeding in the same way as you get speeding on motorways or everywhere else. But you've just changed it, right, for everybody. So it does make a difference. So
enforcement and speed cameras are not relevant?
They are important. They will help. The more you have, they will maximize and leverage up the benefit. But I think what we're saying that even in the absence of those things, you still get benefits from 20 mile an hour and 30 kilometers per hour limit. So combine the two and you get even greater benefits, right? But I wouldn't like anybody to think, well, if the police haven't got time to enforce it, we shouldn't do it. Yeah. Right? You do it and you will get the benefits from it.
Yeah. Iman, do you want to add something?
Yes, I mean, I completely agree with Rod that, you know, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be advocating for 30 kilometers per hour. But what we, you know, what would make it successful and what would be you would be able to scale it and really see the impact is when you have all the elements there, which is, you know, setting the right speed limits, having the right infrastructure there, enforcing it, and you know, the right campaigns but what we can do is start showing this. And as there's more uptake from government and as decision makers get more involved in this, as they design their speed management programs, and that's where, for example, organizations like WI really work closely with city governments to do this. We even advise to look beyond just the speed limit to also, you know, having the right infrastructures, having the right technology there to enforce it better. And I think in countries where we come from, or cities like in Addis, we've put the speed limits there. And it hasn't really changed the behavior. We've actually seen that there was a reduction in compliance to this firm, especially from drivers, where there was when the enforcement went down. So there are, as you know, it's a long process. We've all said that it's not going to happen in a week, and it will take time. But you know, what we should all do our parts in wherever we're working. And I think as the pieces come together, and as government starts to pay attention and really see that this is important, and as we, you know, as Rebecca said, we ensure that there's that accountability in place, that then we can have a more holistic approach to speed management. So definitely.
Yeah, so speed guns, all these things, they have a place, but we shouldn't sit and wait for the police or the communities or the authorities to go out and enforce. Yeah, Rod, you have your hand up.
I think one of the things which is important, I mean, Iman mentioned a holistic approach. And again, a holistic approach understands that the benefits of these are very wide in terms of public health. It's far more than just reducing road casualties. There's public health benefits, there's economic benefits, there's benefits from creating our cities as more lively places. And that's why successful implementations of lower speeds are done with engagement from public health, right? They're done with engagement from education authorities. So everybody knows we're going to get benefits from this. We're going to make our places better places to be. And that means everybody can feel good about driving that little bit slower. This is not about, or just about, driving slower so I won't kill somebody. It's about driving a little bit slower because I'll make my place, my city, my town, my street a better place for all of us to live. And that is a motivator, right, which is very powerful, but we have to voice it. And the authorities, the local governments, the public health people, right, the education people have to join in with that, and then they become very powerful.
Great. Time is running. We have 2 minutes left here. I have a last question, and afterwards we have an opportunity to stay, and you can bounce off your different ideas with each other, but our panelists will leave. So I just have a question here, and this is around coalitions, demanding 30 kilometers an hour with coalitions. Rebecca, do you have some advice on building coalitions? Is it much easier just to work on your own and get things done there directly?
I think it's hard, isn't it? Because our experience is that coalitions are the way forward, always, no matter what level we're advocating at. One thing that's been successful for us, and I think it is probably successful from a community level as well, which Rod might be able to expand on, is identifying people who have the same mission as you, but are coming at it from a completely different angle, whether that's the environment, sustainable streets, air pollution. Like, essentially, if we're looking to build a campaign from the ground and build a strong coalition, it's looking at those groups that are also wanting to improve their environment, whether that's for their children, that's a school environment, that's the air quality, that's a more sustainable city, better cycleways. Like, it's really unifying, trying to get those groups on board and unifying around one key concept that can improve that environment for everyone and help all of these groups achieve their goals as indirect benefits of focusing on speed limits. But on a global level, yeah, coalition building has been very important for us as well.
Yeah. So both Iman and Rod, I'd like Iman maybe start. Do you have a list of coalitions? Where could people look? Who would be the obvious choices for NGOs like our group here to make coalitions with on 30 kilometers an hour in urban settings? And then Rod, you can finish. Iman, do you have some suggestions? Oh, okay, Rod, maybe.
I echo Rebecca there, because what we all want to do is influence politicians. What I say is help them do the right thing. And in the webinar which I did last week on effective activism, I talked there about working with a coalition of influencers, right? People who have they have different objectives from you, because they might be environmentalists, right? Whereas you're in road safety, but you find that thing which they will benefit from and has an objective as well as your own. And you can find those in children's societies, you can find those in people with disability, you can find those people in the environmentalists, you can find those people in public health, right? Who are frankly fed up of stitching people back together again. Right. So you can find many people in your society who will actually benefit from this. And then you assemble those so that they're echoing what you're saying. And that is brilliant, because if you do that, you're actually amplifying and leveraging up your voice. You're giving that communication which says we want 30 kilometers per hour for the right reasons, but all these other people are actually saying we will as well. And that does influence policymakers and so on.
So
Because
what are the typical ones that you would ask us to look at? The typical, the sort of obvious choices.
Right. Doctors, you've got public health, you've got education, right? So how do our children, if you like, gain from being independently mobile? How do children gain much more from being able to walk or cycle to school rather than their mum or dad taking them in the car? So there's children's societies. There are blind societies if you have them in your place. There are faith organisations who are involved in the equality which there is, right, with regard to most of the poor people don't drive around in fast cars, you know, right? So how can we make their mobility more equitable, right, for them? So all these people will gain, and what you have to do is strip off some of the other stuff and very good stuff which you will do on road safety, right? And actually saying, for this initiative, I can find all those people who will sing with me. And if you get them singing with you, then you are a choir of 50 organizations rather than just one in your country or in your city. And that's how you get change, right? And that is what has happened in so many places, right? Where they actually say now, I'm sorry, but we do love 30. And in miles per hour, 20 is plenty, where people live, they work, they play, they shop, or they go to school.
So sorry, Iman, we lost you for a brief second there. I don't know if you have any concluding. So Rod mentioned doctors, teachers, faith-based organizations, other coalitions that we could look to, other type coalitions. I don't know if you have some suggestions.
Yeah, so I was actually, I mean, I definitely agree in terms of, you know, diversifying these groups and really looking at other sectors. But in terms of the mobility sector, I think some common ones that we've engaged with are, you know, vulnerable groups like people with disabilities have very strong sort of advocacy and interest in sort of lower speeds. You know, women's and children's groups that Rod said, open streets movements. We've seen that across many cities that really look at road, not just, you know, the element of road safety, but of inclusive streets, reclaiming streets and then really using it for different purposes. There's a lot of, like in our case where there's like strong sports groups that are really active and really looking at, you know, using these spaces for different purposes. So I think the groups are wide and really understanding the local context and who's really active in this and could raise sort of the work that's being done. I think that's you can tap into many resources.
Okay, I know we could continue for a long time. Rebecca, do you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, I just following on from that, and something that came up in the consultations with the NGOs was cyclists seem to be having lots of traction in changing like road infrastructure and campaigning around road safety. So they seem to be a very powerful group. And another thing of groups that we would probably engage with are mayoral groups that are involved in like C40 cities and that kind of policymaker groups where they're quite progressive, they already have a green agenda, and it's quite easy and it makes sense to target them with this kind of campaign, which can then trickle down into different cities that they are operating in. Those are two groups that I would identify as well.
Great. I want to thank our panelists here. Thank you very much for your time and for your insight and for sharing all your knowledge and your wealth of experience. It's been extremely helpful for all of us. I think we can agree to that. We have actually set this call for another half hour, and we just want to have an opportunity for you to continue these discussions. You might have been inspired by some of the words that have been said, some of your project ideas you want to bounce off with each other. So we'll keep this platform open for all of you, and you can stay and do that. Of course, the panelists are also welcome to stay, but otherwise it's the NGOs who will learn from each other. And I will just say thank you very much to Rebecca, to Rod, and to Iman, and to Patrick for sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. I want to, so Ayo, you have been with us here. You wanted to share something. You had an idea. You wanted to pitch with the rest of us. Are you with us? Maybe you can start. Ayo from Nigeria.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Ayo.
Hello. Lotte.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really want to, we've already started the plan already here in Nigeria. Like I told Patrick over the weekend, I told him that we are looking at continue with our safer school program, and we are trying to take it to a state, another state in the country, the two states, Nigeria. So we started the work already. We are at the stage of community engagement. We are engaging the community. And from what I've seen so far, I believe that this community have one or two things against traffic. They really want the change. And there is a school we are actually working with in Plateau State already. And also yesterday we met with the federal safety, the law, traffic law enforcers in Nigeria here, also concerning our plan. Concerning the United Nations Global Road Safety Week, is going to be in May. The plan we've already started the plan already by consulting the relevant stakeholders. So we are looking at getting the commitment. Not only that, we are looking at getting the implementation, and not only that, we are looking at getting the enforcement.
Great.
This is a very, the particular road we are actually looking at is it's a significant role in the formation of NGO. So yeah, so we need something to be done on that particular road. We took pictures of school children while they are crossing the road, and it's not it's an eyesore. So we are trying to tell the story. We are working with the head teachers of the school, the PTA, Parent Teacher Association of the school also, to build the story. So we have started collecting the story already, and then we are using the story to send the message during the Global Road Safety Week.
All right.
So that's our plan.
That sounds very solid and very a lot of different components that are quite powerful. Very good luck with it. I know we have a lot of people who would like to share their ideas and maybe get some comments from the rest of the audience. So maybe you could try to make it as brief as possible so we can bring in as many of you as possible. I know, could you please put, if you want to add something, then add it in the chat, and then we'll take you one by one because we have a queue here. Corinne, we have you.
Okay, thank you. But
yeah,
it's just the challenge.
Thank you for sharing. Corinne, we have you next.
Yeah, I just have a
Thank you.
question. Rebecca mentioned the social media materials being flexible and editable, and I've just downloaded them. They're all JPEGs. How do we edit them and change languages and stuff like that?
Very practical question, Rebecca. It was just launched today, Corinne, so maybe there's a little hiccups here. Sorry.
I'm going to upload some as PowerPoint slides, so it should, with all the stuff in this, it should make it easier for people to add in logos and edit. I'm sorry those files aren't in there.
That's okay. I was just checking. Thanks.
No problem. No problem.
All right. The next one I have here, so very practical. So Rebecca, you will sort that out, so it could be downloaded. Thank you, and edited. Wilson,
yes.
Are you with us? Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Good.
Are you getting me?
Could you just introduce yourself?
Okay, this is Wilson PC from Uganda, Responsible Drivers Uganda. My contribution, I'm looking at how can we do the sustainability of the exercise rather than only having a 1 week of activity. I was looking at trying to engage the key sectors at different levels. For example, like in Uganda, the local government as paramount, Then Minister of Health as part of it, education, because education, if we engage them and we try to emphasize the importance of teaching children in school to appreciate what road safety is, it will take a mileage. When children are growing, they will understand what they were taught and how to sustain it. And then another component which I thought is also very important, the faith-based organizations. You know, faith-based organizations, whenever they are preaching and they talk about it, it carries more weight in somebody's mindset, always to think ahead, that this is what even the preacher was saying during the service. And lastly, I thought it would be also of great value to engage the cultural leaders, because the cultural leaders, in one way or the other, they carry too much weight in person's attitude, behaviors, and understanding new innovations which are pertinent in one's life. Whatever they say, they will always believe it and want to take it on, as their leader has already mentioned. So for that, I can also leave other people to contribute. Thank you.
Great. So a comment around the importance of sustainability and bringing in different groups. Shantanu?
This is Mridul Bhasin, not Shantanu here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We are dealing with the subject, you know, as we discuss it, so many new facets are opening. And I just put in a question saying that school buses, at times they are defaulters. The drivers tend to speed when they are not within the school limits. They slow down when they enter the school limit and the boundary wall, etc. But within the city, sometimes they are very prone to speeding and causing accidents at times, especially in India, in rural areas. So that's a gives a wider scope to the whole you know, advocacy which we are referring to right now. Just an observation.
All right.
So yes, you are right. We can continue it, you know, continue the advocacy further. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, Patrick, do you have a comment for these speeding drivers here who is always causing so much problem with all of us? What do we do about them?
Okay. Thank you, Lotte. I was thinking as Chantal was speaking that one thing is to look at why the drivers are speeding. I've seen there are several reasons for drivers speeding and slowing down when they're within the school compound. And basically, this is now where we have to involve all the stakeholders. So we have a bus driver who is supposed to sort of drop kids at several places within a certain amount of time, or bring the kids to school within a certain amount of time. So they will speed away from the school compound to make sure that they they pick and drop as many kids as they are supposed to do in that time. And that is a construct made, for example, by their employer, who really is actually responsible for these guys speeding up. And this happens also to public transport, that they have to speed even where there's speed limit, to make sure that they are reaching their targets as they are told by the employer. So I would imagine that we would need, as you're saying, like what I was saying, the parent-teacher association, everybody on board. So we need actually to, and again, as Rebecca said, identify all these so that we're able to connect the dots, so that when, for example, when a crash happens and a child is killed, actually we sometimes blame the driver very quickly without looking back and saying, what were the reasons, what was the events before that, what is the condition of this driver, is he under pressure, and so on. So I would just think we need, as in stakeholders, looking at who we need to have a consensus building, and also so that we are all responsible and change that culture and of speeding.
Yeah. Rod, I saw you made a comment. Do you want to, should we just leave it there? You say one benefit of talking about and campaigning for 30 kilometers an hour is that it sensitizes everyone to the problems of speed, get people to understand that 30 is the only safe speed around people, and you get a benefit in other places as well. Do you want to add anything, Rod?
Well, I think it's been found that an experience when you set 30 kilometers as a city-wide limit, and they've recently done this in Brussels, it actually reduced speeds on the roads which weren't reduced as well. Right, and I think that's the thing about, again, this being a social thing. You're actually sensitizing people to the fact that speed does matter. and actually also to the fact that speed doesn't get you to where you want to go quicker. So,
yeah.
you know, it's going to be better if you keep that speed.
Yeah, there's a lot of mythbusters on the website for the UN Road Safety Week, right, Liz and Rebecca? And one of them is, I won't get there if I'm not speeding, or if I'm slowing down, I won't get to my destination, something like that. And all these myths are addressed there. So Liz, do you want to say something there?
Yeah, so I think that was one of the things that kept coming up right the way through, is that there are these myths. I think, Rod, you wrote those, didn't you? And so I think that is a resource as well, you know, to be prepared for those questions, because you will get them. You'll get them from the policymakers, you'll get them from the community. So being ready with the information that breaks down those myths is, yeah, so those are on the website, and I'm not sure if they're also standalone documents as well.
Yeah, great. But these are there for you when you get all these questions from the communities and from your decision makers, that you are ready to, and you're armed to respond. Mostly, Algeria, you have a question, or you have a comment? Please take it away. You're muted now. Mostly, you're muted. Could you unmute, please?
Yes, you hear me now. Thank you very much for the subject you are treating now. I was waiting for these days, because I was talking about the 30 issue many years ago, when some listeners of me in that time, they laughed when I talked about reducing the speed to 30. They say, then how we reach our goals with 30 kilometers per hour. So I say, no, this is an issue only around schools. Now we are talking about 30, not only around school, but in the urban area. In Algeria, we have a different, maybe a challenge, which is a conjunction and health problems and economical problems around the dominance of cars, because there is not better public transport. So majority of people use their own car. So we have a problem even near schools. In the morning, we saw thousands of or hundreds of cars near the door of the schools, because people, they are fair to send their kids. So they use cars everywhere. Our capital now is holding more than 3 million cars. So we have maybe different challenge with other colleagues in Africa. So we are not talking only about the 30 speed, but we are talking about the dominance, the car dependency, and the challenges that our community will face in the future, either in the health issue, in the economical issue, in the social issue. We have no places for our kids to play, to walk, to cycle, to other means. Thank you.
So the work is carved out for you mostly. Rod, do you want to say something?
We have something in common, because when I first started campaigning for 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, they laughed at me. They're not laughing now. I think that's it. It's a cultural change, and in different communities are realizing at different levels that the car is not the answer. you know, taking your children by car to school because there are too many cars on the road is not going to solve this problem. We need to readdress it, and we need to readdress it by thinking in communities. What are our values about what we want to do? And what are our values about allowing people that choice of being able to walk or cycle? And especially for our children, because there's very firm research that up until the age of 13, children cannot reliably detect the speed of cars above 30 kilometers per hour. They don't have the cognitive skills to protect themselves. And therefore, the only people that can protect them is us adults. And so therefore, if we do want children to be able to have their mobility, to walk to school, to learn, to actually be able to go to the park, to go to see their grandparents, to actually be independent human beings, then we have to change this, because driving many, many more cars than we had 20 years ago around at speeds which are not compatible with them walking and having their mobility is not going to work, right? So it's a realization that we have to change. So in the same way as we're realizing on climate change, we have to change, we're realizing that in terms of cities and our mobility and our sustainability, we have to change. And the biggest change and the cheapest change and the thing which connects across the whole population is lowering the speed limits in urban places. It's cheap, it's effective, it can be applied universally, it doesn't require huge skills, everybody understands it, what it is, right? And that's why it is coming out now. It's not only the global best practice, but the global normal practice. And I think that's what's so important about the Global Road Safety Week. It actually saying 30 kilometers is normal. It's not just something which you can do in Brussels or London or Paris. It's something which we can do here to make my street, my town, my city, my country a much better place to be.
Yeah. So mostly, you just continue your work. Yeah. One of the points that Kulan you're making is around the grants and COVID and the pandemic crisis, whether you have to go to the communities and whether what you should do there. We will never ever ask you to do anything that's against the recommendations in your country or anything that's unsafe. So if it's online activities that if you can only do online activities, then you do online activities. You know, don't do anything that is unsafe for you in any way or is against your country's regulations. I don't know if any of you have anything there, but there's a lot of material on online with social media banners and things like that. A lot of the things you can do online. You can have meetings online. You can send letters online. You can do all these things online. So just really be mindful that you should stay safe. Beyond that's the most important part. Don't put yourself in danger. I know Prince Ugu from Nigeria, you also wanted to add something. And just be mindful that we only have a few more minutes left. So if there's one more person who wants to share something, we have time for that if Prince allows us to. Prince, take it away, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending on where you are. My regards to the panel team, especially Mr. Patrick, who has been so committed in this course, and the rest, and Ms. Lotte, who will give me this opportunity. Definitely, we work in here in Nigeria, and we would like to share briefly in a minute or two our ideas, our plans ahead of the UN Global Road Safety Week. Each country with its own attitude, each country with its own road safety problems. So you approach your country based on the attitude of your people. Our concern mostly is the children of the poor who don't even have the opportunity of getting into a bus. They cross 1 or 2 roads before they go to school, and many of them are knocked down in the process, especially within the community. In the city here in Abuja, we've witnessed this. So what we do, and what we are doing already, is an instruction of the 30 kilometer per hour to wheel them down, letting them know that they need to slow down for the kids. And also involving government is very important, because over here, those who are even overspeeding are the government convoys. You see them moving in the city, you'll be scared. So what do you expect if there is no massive voice? So we have created a coalition here, the coalition of road safety NGOs, that is giving us a stronger voice, in Nigeria here, and over 25 NGOs are there. So we are mopping up our energy together towards this event, and it's going to be a great one, because annually, most of the time we have events like this, and the challenges are the issue of funding, because if the government are culprits, they will not fund you to campaign against them. That's where the issue is. So most of the NGOs have little voice. They can't come up and say their mind, because those who they expect to support them are the violators, are part of the violators. So if we can get more support internationally, it will boost our campaign here. And I want us to look into the media aspect, pre and post event. Sustaining this campaign is very important, and the important will come from the impact we make during the event, those that we involve during the event. So if we involve most of these stakeholders, and the discussion is on the media, and social media, electronic media, and the rest of them, it remains in the mind of the people, and it will go a long way in implementing with little enforcement. Because if people receive the message and they are aware, you have little enforcement to do. It's when there's violation that you need much more enforcement. And people are educated and up to date with the information required. We believe that there will be little violations, and this 30 kilometers per hour speed will be sustained, globally. It's a global norm, and we feel most of the NGOs here will take the message to their various countries and see that we'll have a formidable event come May 17 to 23. Thank you very much for the opportunity to
Thank you very much. And Ayo, who's also from Nigeria, I can't remember, Ayo, are you in Abuja as well? But I encourage you to work together, all the NGOs in the country. So that was one of the points, make coalitions there. Okay, Iman, you had your hand up.
I'll try to make this very brief. I just dropped off earlier on the discussion around really this congestion and this larger issue of challenges with cities. And I just want to say three things. The first is that when we're talking about transportation issues, they're just a symptom of a larger issue, and that's really how we're planning our cities. So the way that cities are being planned, and not just in Algeria, but across a lot of the region around the African region or low-income countries, is that people cannot access their basic services using public transport or walking or cycling, right? So people are sort of forced to look into options of driving. So initially, really, we can start having these discussions, but ultimately what we want is having these cities that really, where you can access your schools, your jobs through walking and cycling. So I think that's one thing to note. The second thing is, a lot of the times when you have these congested roads, most of the time you'll have policymakers or engineers talk about widening of roads, and that's completely, it's just going to continue to exacerbate the situation. And as you widen roads, more cars will come and it will be more congested. So there's a lot of evidence around this, is that if people push back saying, it's not about lowering speeds, it's actually, the solutions should be widening the roads, but that in itself will bring about more road safety issues, more congestion, and really reduce the quality of life. So one thing that has been an important tool that I just want to share is that sometimes even our policymakers, even the public, they can't visualize cities without cars or streets without cars. And so in the case of in many areas that we're working in, when you have these open streets days where you just close down the streets from cars, people all of a sudden, it's the way they feel. So all of a sudden, a Monday morning where you had rows of just cars and it's so congested and you don't want to walk and you're having a really bad day, and then you look at Sunday morning where that same street was closed, and all of a sudden you see all these kids come out, people cycling, walking, restaurants have put out their cars on the street, and there's this, you see the change in the way people are feeling, in the happiness, in the level of happiness in people, in the sense of safety. So you just see, by just taking out the car, you've changed an entire dynamic of a city. So sometimes it's creating these opportunities where people can visualize what their cities can look like without cars, that they can actually walk that street. So sometimes we find people come to us and say, you know, I didn't know I could walk a kilometer or 2 kilometers, but now that I've tried it on this day without cars, now I'm more willing to do it on any other day. So this creates a change in people's behavior. So just wanted to say that if you can create these moments, I think that's really impactful.
So that could be an activity for the week, for during the week to close down a street, Iman?
Yes, I mean, we found it very powerful, especially if it's a street that people feel that is already dangerous and they don't want to walk, or where there's a street where there's a lot of mixed activities that by just closing it down, you see people come out, want to cycle, want to just hang out and enjoy it. And then collecting information, like what was mentioned earlier, before and after the event, you can ask people how they felt previously on using the street, and then you can ask them after and what changed. And it could be that, you know, the exposure, the less exposure to cars, or then not having cars in that area, what kind of benefits it brought, and how and what they would like to see in the future. I think even if you don't have data on speed, these are very useful sort of survey information that you can use to influence policymakers and decision makers.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Rod, I'm sorry, we are out of time, but I mean, you're welcome to stay. Rod, yeah, so
there was
take it away.
A comment about the media. And
yeah, media.
Recently I was approached by someone in India who wanted me to write an article or give some notes about Tony's Plenty and the 30 kilometer per hour movement. So I wrote back to them in an email, and then about a week later, an article appeared in the Citizen News in India, which was then later taken and actually put into a newspaper in Thailand and also Pakistan. And one of the things is that when we're looking at 30 kilometers per hour, it is actually universal in terms of the arguments, the benefits, and so on. So please, one thing which you can do is take these arguments, and I have actually just posted the link to the article there. Take those, email it to your local and hopefully supportive journalist, and actually, have you seen this? Should we be doing this in Uganda or South Africa or whatever? Get that debate going. Get that debate going well before road safety week. You know, that is possible. And again, this idea that, look, they're thinking about this, they're talking about this in India. Well, why can't we talk about this in South Africa as well, or Argentina, or wherever, right? Because it's all universal. We've all got the same problems, yeah, and we've all actually got the same solution.
So a very good idea there for your UN Road Safety Week, and also maybe something that you want to apply for a grant with, closing down a street in your city. Ask people how they feel about that, invite your media, invite your decision maker, make sure that you get those sort of emotions. How do you feel about this, and the dreams about how this could be the new norm. We have been, we're over time now, so I will say thank you very much also to the panelists who stayed, Rod and Iman and Rebecca and Patrick. And thank you to all of you. You can find much more information about the UN Road Safety Week on the UN Road Safety Week's website, but also on our website. Please make sure you check your mailboxes, because we're sending out a lot of information, grants, things like that. And then good luck with everything. We're here to help you. So just approach us if there's anything that you're looking for or that you're uncertain about. We're here to help you. So wish you a good, what is it, Thursday today, and good luck with everything. Take care. Bye-bye.